a young boy in the remote village of Baracara, deep in the heart of Guyana's wilderness, using mangoes and oranges as cricket balls because real ones are a luxury his family simply cannot afford. The nearest cricket ground is a 2-day boat journey away, and the dream of playing professional cricket seems as distant as the stars. This is where our story begins, not in the glittering stadiums of international cricket, but in the mud and simplicity of rural Guyana, where dreams are born from desperation and nurtured by unshakable faith. Shamar Joseph was born on August 31st, 1999, in Tuckber Park, Beach, but it was in the isolated community of Baracara where his character was forged. Baracara isn't just remote, it's forgotten. Located 225 kilometers up the Kanje River, this village is so cut off from civilization that even basic amenities like reliable internet and telephone connections are luxuries. For young Shamar, the outside world existed only in his imagination and in the crackling radio broadcasts that occasionally carried cricket commentary when the weather permitted. His father worked as a laborer, earning barely enough to feed the family, while his mother struggled to keep their humble home together. There were days when meals consisted of rice and whatever vegetables they could grow in their small garden. Cricket equipment was an impossible dream, so Shamar improvised. Fallen mangoes became his cricket balls. A piece of wood carved by his own hands served as his bat, and empty cans marked his stumps. The village children would gather in the small clearing behind his house, where Shamar would spend hours perfecting his bowling action, unaware that he was laying the foundation for what would become one of cricket's most remarkable stories. But dreams don't fill empty stomachs, and as Shamar entered his teenage years, the harsh reality of his circumstances began to weigh heavily on his shoulders. His parents, though supportive of his passion, worried about their son's future. Cricket seemed like a fantasy when basic survival was a daily challenge. The pressure to contribute to the family income intensified when his father injured his back in a construction accident, leaving him unable to work for months. Suddenly, 15-year-old Shamar found himself thrust into the role of provider. The decision to leave Baracara in 2018 was perhaps the most difficult moment of Shamar's young life. At 19, he kissed his mother goodbye, promising to send money home, and made the treacherous journey to New Amsterdam. The bustling port city was a shock to his system. The noise, the crowds, the concrete jungle that replaced his beloved green wilderness. He had no connections, no qualifications, and barely any money. His first few weeks were spent sleeping on park benches and searching desperately for work. Finally, he found employment as a security guard, working brutal 12-hour shifts that began at 6 in the evening and ended at 6 in the morning. The pay was minimal, barely enough to afford a small room in a rundown boarding house and send a little money back to his family. But Shamar had made a pact with himself. He would not let his cricket dreams die, no matter how exhausted he became. After finishing his night shift, when other guards would go home to sleep, Shamar would head to the local cricket ground with his makeshift equipment. The sight was both inspiring and heartbreaking. Here was a young man, eyes red with fatigue, still in his security uniform, bowling ball after ball at imaginary batsmen. The local cricketers initially mocked him, calling him the night watchman who thinks he can play cricket. But Shamar's determination was unshakable. He would practice for 3 hours, sleep for 4, then wake up to repeat the cycle. Weekends meant construction work to earn extra money, but he always reserved Sundays for longer cricket sessions. The turning point came in 2021 when a former Guyana cricketer, coaching at the local club, noticed Shamar's raw pace and unusual bowling action. "Son," he said after watching Shamar bowl for 30 minutes straight without losing steam, "you've got something special, but you're wasting it working yourself to death." The coach, Michael Singh, offered to train Shamar properly, but only if he could commit to regular practice sessions. This meant reducing his work hours and, consequently, his income. For weeks, Shamar agonized over the decision. Reducing his income meant less money for his family, who were still struggling in Barakara. His mother, sensing his dilemma during one of their rare phone conversations, delivered the words that would change everything. "Beta, if you don't chase your dreams now, you'll regret it forever. We'll manage somehow." With tears streaming down his face, Shamar made the decision that would define his future. Under Singh's guidance, Shamar's raw talent began to blossom. His unique bowling action, developed from years of practicing alone, generated surprising pace and bounce. But it was his mental toughness, forged through years of hardship, that truly set him apart. When other bowlers would tire after a few overs, Shamar seemed to grow stronger. The work ethic developed during those grueling security guard days had conditioned him for sustained physical and mental pressure. In 2022, the moment Shamar had dreamed of since his fruitball days finally arrived, he was selected for the Guyana Harpy Eagles first-class team. The phone call came while he was working his security shift. He immediately called his mother, and for the first time in years, he heard her cry, not from sorrow, but from overwhelming joy. His village of Baracara, which had never had a professional sports person, erupted in celebration when the news reached them via the village radio. But success at first-class level brought new challenges. The standard was significantly higher, and Shamar had to adapt quickly. There were moments of self-doubt, especially when he was expensive in his early matches. The media criticized his unconventional action, calling him a village bowler trying to play real cricket. These comments cut deep, but they also fueled his determination. He remembered the mangoes he used as balls, the wooden bat he had carved himself, and every sacrifice his family had made. The breakthrough performance came against Barbados, when Shamar took 6 wickets for 47 runs, dismantling a batting lineup that included several international players. The cricket world began to take notice. Scouts from the West Indies board attended his subsequent matches, and whispers began circulating about a fast bowler from Guyana who was generating serious pace and taking wickets consistently. December 2023 brought news that seemed surreal. Shamar Joseph, the security guard from Barakara, was named in the West Indies test squad for the tour of Australia. The announcement was made while he was at his part-time security job. He had continued working to support his family even after his first-class debut. His supervisor, who had become like a father figure to him, personally drove him to the airport when it was time to leave for Australia. The journey to Adelaide for his test debut was emotional. As the plane took off, Shamar pressed his face to the window, thinking about how far he had traveled. Not just physically, but from a life of obscurity to representing his country on the world's biggest stage. The boy who had once used fruits as cricket balls was now sharing a dressing room with international stars. January 17, 2024, at the Adelaide Oval, became the date that changed everything. When Captain Craig Brathwaite threw Shamar the ball for his first over in Test cricket, his hands were trembling slightly. The first ball was wide and the Adelaide crowd jeered, but the second ball, would be talked about for years to come. It was a sharp, rising delivery that Steve Smith, one of the world's best batsmen, could only edge to the wicket-keeper. The crowd fell silent. In the commentary box, former cricketers scrambled to find words. A village boy from Guyana had just dismissed Australia's star batsman with his second ball in Test cricket. But it was at the Gabba in Brisbane where Shamar truly announced himself to the world. The Gabba is Australia's fortress, where visiting teams come to be humbled. The pitch was bouncy, the crowd hostile, and the Australian batsman confident. What happened next was the stuff of legends. Shamar bowled with the fury of every rejection he had faced. Every night he had worked when he wanted to sleep. Every moment his family had gone without so he could chase his dreams. 7 wickets for 68 runs. The figures tell only part of the story. Each wicket was a statement. To everyone who had doubted him, to the village that had raised him, to the boy who had once wondered if his dreams were too big. When the final Australian wicket fell, Shamar collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he had achieved. The West Indies had won their first test in Australia in 27 years, and a security guard from Baracara was the hero. The celebration that followed was extraordinary. In Guyana, entire communities gathered around radios and television sets, cheering as if their own son had conquered the world. In Baracara, his mother wept as neighbors carried her on their shoulders, celebrating the village's first international cricket star. The government declared a national holiday, and suddenly everyone wanted to know about the young man from the forgotten village. The IPL auction in 2024 brought new challenges. Despite his test heroics, Shamar went unsold in the initial rounds, a harsh reminder that cricket success doesn't always translate immediately into commercial value. The rejection stung, but it also reminded him of how far he had come and how much further he could go. When he finally got his chance with the Lucknow Super Giants in 2025, being sold for 75 lakh rupees, it felt like vindication. His IPL debut was humbling. Against the Kolkata Knight Riders, he bowled one of the longest overs in IPL history, 10 balls that conceded 22 runs. The crowd that had once cheered his test heroics now watched in uncomfortable silence. Social media was brutal, with critics questioning whether his test success was a fluke. That night, alone in his hotel room, Shamar called his mother. "Beta," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. "Remember the mangoes? Remember where you came from. One bad day doesn't erase all the good ones." Those words became his anchor. In subsequent matches, Shamar showed the resilience that had carried him from security guard to international cricket star. He bounced back with improved performances, proving that his place in professional cricket was earned, not gifted. The boy who had learned to bowl with fruits had also learned to handle pressure and criticism. Today, as Shamar Joseph prepares for the next chapter of his career, his story continues to inspire millions. He has established a cricket academy in his home region, providing proper equipment and coaching to young talents who might otherwise go unnoticed. Every piece of equipment donated carries a note from someone who once used mangoes as cricket balls. But success has not been without its costs. The physical demands of fast bowling have taken their toll on his young body. Recent injury setbacks, including being ruled out of the upcoming series against India, serve as reminders that even the strongest spirits inhabit fragile flesh. Yet, each setback only seems to strengthen his resolve, much like those early days when poverty and isolation tried to crush his dreams. The transformation from Shamar the security guard to Shamar the international cricket star is complete. But the essence of the man remains unchanged. He still calls his mother every day, still sends money home to Barakara, and still remembers the kindness of strangers who helped him when he had nothing. In a world where sports stars often lose touch with their roots, Shamar remains firmly grounded in the soil that nurtured his dreams. His journey reminds us that champions are not born in comfort and privilege. They are forged in the furnace of adversity. Every great success story begins with someone who refused to accept their circumstances as their destiny. Shamar Joseph's story is not just about cricket. It's about the power of human determination to overcome any obstacle, no matter how insurmountable it may seem. The boy from Baracara, who once used mangoes as cricket balls, has shown the world that dreams have no geography, no social boundaries, and no expiration date. His story continues to unfold, but the message is already clear. If you have the courage to chase your dreams and the determination to persist through every setback, there is no limit to how far you can go. In a world that often tells us to be realistic, Shamar Joseph reminds us that sometimes the most unrealistic dreams are the ones most worth chasing. From the remote villages of Guyana to the grand stadiums of international cricket, his journey proves that with enough faith, sacrifice, and hard work, even the impossible becomes inevitable.